The government's warned that tougher restrictions may need to be imposed if people fail to follow current guidance to control the spread of coronavirus. Boris Johnson said it was a very perilous moment and that it was imperative that people limited their social contacts. Dr. Mike Tildesley, who's an epidemiologist and advises the government's SAGE panel, said more restrictions weren't the answer.
Really, any kind of change that could be made from this point are really only going to have a very small impact. So the idea of, say, tightening up rules around supermarkets, closing places of worship, potentially closing nurseries to anyone other than key workers, I mean, these are things that could happen. They're only probably going to have a relatively small impact on the R number.
Earlier, ministers published plans to immunise tens of millions of people in the UK by the spring. So far, nearly 2.3 million people have received their first jabs. The number of patients with COVID-19 in hospitals in England has risen to a record 32,070, according to the latest figures from NHS England. That's 20% higher than a week ago. Dr. Eugenie Rast, a consultant at Croydon Hospital, says staff are under an immense amount of pressure.
When we came out of the first wave, I don't think any of us thought that we could do this again, and yet we are doing this again. It feels that the pressure is more sustained, and I do think that patient numbers are greater, and I think we're in for the long haul.
The supermarket chains Morrisons and Sainsbury's are to bar customers who refuse to wear face coverings from Monday. Earlier, the Vaccines Minister Nadhim Zahawi said the government was concerned that shops weren't enforcing social distancing rules. The move was welcomed by these shoppers.
It's quite disturbing. We all have a responsibility in taking care of each other and being responsible. So when people can't just do a simple thing as wearing a mask, I find it very problematic.
People don't seem to care as much now on the lockdown that they did on the first one. People queuing up, people trying to keep their distance away from each other. But now it's as if there ain't even a lockdown at the moment. On the first lockdown, they'd get in a car and drive around you just to get past you.
A man who murdered 3 men in a park in Reading last summer has been given a whole life sentence. Hari Sadullah admitted stabbing to death James Furlong, David Wales and Joe Ritchie Bennett and trying to murder 3 other men. The judge found he'd been motivated by Islamic extremism. The Prime Minister's been criticised for travelling 7 miles to go cycling in East London at the weekend. A Downing Street source insisted the bike ride was within the rules. The non-league side Chorley, who knocked Derby out of the FA Cup, had been drawn at home to the Premier League team Wolves in the 4th round. League Two's Crawley, who beat Leeds, will travel to Bournemouth while Manchester United host Liverpool in the pick of the ties.